Power Queen Lyra. Vashon had learned in 2 brutal years was something everyone else possessed. She stood alone at the viewport of the High Council chamber, 28 years old and drowning in a crown that grew heavier each morning. Beyond reinforced glass, Altheria turned in slow majesty, blue oceans, violet continents. Clouds glowing faintly under twin suns, beautiful, serene, a perfect lie. Behind her, 8 council members debated her future as if she weren't breathing the same air. Admiral Cade Veron's voice sliced through the others with surgical precision. 62 years commanding fleets had refined his tone into something that didn't request it declared outcomes. "The cathedral stands ready, Your Majesty. The divine failsafe has been consecrated. We require only your authorization." Lyra turned from false serenity to face manufactured authority. The chamber stretched before her in white stone arches married to holographic displays. Ancient architecture hiding technology so advanced it mimicked magic. 8 figures occupied a semicircle robes of state draped over shoulders that had carried real power far longer than she'd been alive. Varon commanded the center position. Silver-haired ramrod posture, his dress uniform carrying enough metals to require structural support. Behind him, holographic displays showed the cathedral battleship in orbit, a vessel massive enough to have its own gravitational shadow. "Authorization for what, Admiral?" Lyra kept her voice level. 2 years had taught her that much. "To deploy a weapon we don't understand against colonists we haven't tried to negotiate with." Counselor Praxis, ancient and bitter, dismissed her concern with a wave. "The outer colonies are in open rebellion, child. Negotiation is for those who respect authority. Child, always child. Never to her face in public forums, but here." Masks came off like funeral shrouds. "My mother," Lyra said quietly, measuring each word, "believed in finding solutions that didn't require burning inhabited worlds." "Your mother," Varon replied, and ice crystallized in his voice, "is dead. The crown passes, so must its wisdom." 2 years. Her mother dead for 2 years, and still some mornings Lyra woke forgetting reaching for counsel that would never return. Heart failure, they'd announced. Natural causes. The funeral had been spectacular, the grief performative, and the power vacuum instantaneous. "The vote," Counselor Thane announced, consulting his datapad with bureaucratic efficiency. "All in favor of authorizing Admiral Varon to deploy the cathedral with full discretionary power over the divine failsafe." Hands rose. 1, 3, 5, 8. Lyra watched the 2 abstentions carefully avoid her gaze. "Motion carries," Thane declared. "Admiral, you have authorization." Varon's bow achieved perfect correctness, the kind that felt like mockery wrapped in protocol. "Your Majesty demonstrates profound wisdom." The council filed out, robes rustling, conversations already pivoting to other matters. Veron lingered, studying her with eyes that had watched solar systems burn and felt nothing worth recording. "You're afraid," he observed. "I'm cautious." "Your mother was cautious. It rendered her ineffective." He moved closer, voice dropping to tactical register. "The universe respects strength, girl, not hesitation. The cathedral is our birthright, forged by ancestors to ensure Altherian supremacy. Your reluctance to employ it—" He shook his head with calculated disappointment. "Some might interpret that as cowardice." Lyra's nails bit into her palms. "And some might recognize genocide as a war crime, Admiral. Regardless of who authors it." Something flickered behind Varon's eyes. Not anger, colder. Calculation reassessing variables. "I serve the crown," he said finally, "even when the crown fails to serve itself." He departed. The door sealed with a sound like tombs closing. Lyra stood alone in the council chamber, 28 years old and utterly powerless, staring at the hologram of a weapon she couldn't control in the hands of a man she didn't trust to see humans as anything beyond mistakes requiring correction. She thought of her mother's last words, whispered in a hospital bed, while machines failed and doctors lied with professional compassion. 3 words that made no sense then and haunted every decision now. Find the Watcher. Hiring Garrison Thorne required shadows because everything that mattered happened there. Lyra descended through Altheria Prime's commercial levels in an unmarked shuttle, no royal insignia, no visible escort. The city sprawled in archaeological layers, centuries of construction stacked like geological strata. At the bottom, where ancient stone showed through modern facades, you found people history had systematically forgotten. The shuttle touched down in a district officially called Lowtown. Lyra called it honest. She wore civilian clothes, hair hidden beneath a hood, moving through crowds with lifetime training in tactical invisibility. 2 bodyguards followed at distance dressed as dock workers. 4 more she couldn't see but knew existed. The bar occupied ground floor space in a building that predated her grandmother's coronation. No name displayed, no exterior lights. The kind of establishment where questions weren't asked, because answers could prove terminal. Inside, smoke merged with shadows. Music played low enough to hide conversations. 30 people scattered among tables, most looking like they'd killed at least once and processed the experience with minimum trauma. Garrison Thorne sat alone in the back corner, looking exactly like his file photo and nothing like it simultaneously. She'd studied his record, 55 years old, former Navy SEAL, Earth's most elite warriors, 20 years of classified operations. Honorable discharge with commendations mostly redacted. After that, private military contracting, security consulting, and a reputation among those who knew for being the man you hired when everyone else was already dead and you needed different outcomes. But files captured data, not essence. Thorne looked carved from stone someone had forgotten to polish. Tall, broad-shouldered, gray-threading, dark hair face that had stopped caring about smiles somewhere around his 30th classified mission. He wore civilian clothes that couldn't disguise tactical awareness in how he sat, angled to see both exits, one hand always free, weight distributed for rapid movement. He watched Lyra cross the room with eyes that had witnessed horrors and forgotten nothing, but learned to live anyway. "You're late," he said as she sat. "You're difficult to locate." "That's intentional." He sipped something amber from a glass. "Most people who find me are attempting murder, or hiring me for murder. Occasionally both." His gaze flicked to her bodyguards. "Yours are competent. 2 at the door, 1 at the bar, 1 on the roof across the street." Lyra's expression remained neutral. "You missed the 5th. "Didn't miss her. Woman in blue jacket, northeast table, pretending to read. She's your best operator." He set down the glass. "So, Your Majesty, what does the Queen of Altheria want with a washed-up mercenary from Earth?" "You survived the Great Purge." The words landed like stones in still water. Thorne's face went perfectly still, the kind of stillness preceding violence. "That was 25 years ago," he said quietly, "and classified at levels that make classified look transparent. My mother maintained files the Council doesn't know exist." Lyra leaned forward. "You were there, on the cathedral, when Varen murdered the Void Watchers. Official record states Watchers died in combat. My mother wrote a different record, one documenting Admiral Varen executing 50 unarmed prisoners because they opposed something called the Divine Failsafe." She paused, reading his face. "You were number 51. You escaped." Thorne studied her with the focus of someone reading maps to dangerous territories. "Finally, your mother was intelligent, smart enough to know when leaving the past buried served everyone better. She's dead, Mr. Thorne. Heart failure. Natural causes." Lyra's voice cracked fractionally. "Except I discovered her private logs. Last entry recorded 6 hours before death. She wrote 3 words, 'Find the Watcher,' and you believe she meant me. You're the only one left breathing." Garrison Thorne regarded her for a long moment. Around them, the bar continued its business, people trading stories and lies and whatever made darkness bearable. Finally, he produced something from his jacket, a small data chip. "This contains my terms. Standard contract, nothing fancy. I train your royal guard, teach them tactics that work in actual combat instead of parade grounds. 6 months minimum. I answer to you exclusively and critically. His eyes hardened. No one knows why I'm really there. Why are you really there? He smiled without warmth reaching his eyes. Because your mother asked me to protect you. 2 years ago, 3 weeks before she died, she knew something was coming. Knew it would kill her. And knew you'd need someone who understood what Varen actually represents. Lyra felt ice crystallize in her chest. What does he represent? A man who believes weapons matter more than people, and the divine fail-safe. Thorn leaned back. Your Majesty, that thing isn't a weapon. It's the conclusion of everything. Your mother understood. That's why the Watchers had to die, because we figured out its true function. Which is, you'll see. He stood, dropping payment on the table. My shuttle departs in 6 hours. If you're serious, have someone meet me at Bay 17 with whatever cover story you've invented. If not, he shrugged. I've got a dozen offers from people who don't ask complicated questions. He moved toward the door, then stopped, turned back. Your Majesty, your mother was one of the bravest people I encountered in 30 years of knowing brave people. She opposed her entire government to pursue what was right. That variety of courage. He shook his head. It gets you killed. Remember that. Then he vanished into the crowd like smoke dissipating. Lyra sat alone at the table, hands trembling slightly, contemplating courage and death and crowns that never quite fit properly. Outside in Lowtown's shadows, her bodyguards converged. The team leader touched her earpiece. Your Majesty, target is clear. Should we proceed with extraction protocol? Lyra examined the data chip in her hand. Thorn had written one word in permanent marker. Watcher. Negative, she said quietly. Transmit to the palace. I'm hiring a new military consultant. The council doesn't require details. Ma'am, Admiral Varen will. I'll manage Varen. She stood, pulling the hood back over distinctive features, and walked into the night where queens became anonymous faces and secrets were the only currency with actual value. Above her, the cathedral hung in orbit, massive and patient and waiting for orders that would end worlds. Cathedral battleship was performing excessive holiness. Garrison Thorn stood in the main hangar bay duffel bag over one shoulder, studying architecture with a soldier's eye for operational bullshit. Arches overhead mimicking cathedral vaults, etchings glowing faintly, probably circuit patterns disguised as religious iconography. The air smelled of incense and ionized metal, meaning someone had plumbed perfume into ventilation systems. Any warship requiring prayer to function was already making excuses. Commander Thorn. A figure approached, female, early 30s, bearing, suggesting she'd earned rank through competence rather than connections. She wore Royal Guard uniform, dark blue with silver piping hand resting naturally near her sidearm. I'm Commander Bryn Castellan, head of Her Majesty's personal security. Welcome aboard, Cathedral. Thorn shook her offered hand. Firm grip, calluses in correct places. Commander, impressive ship, slightly excessive on decoration. Castellan's lips twitched. Between us, the incense makes me sneeze. But tradition supersedes comfort. She gestured toward main corridors. I'll escort you to quarters. Her Majesty wanted to brief you personally, but Admiral Varon's scheduled a fleet exercise. She's on the bridge. Varon's here. Admiral Varon commands Cathedral. Her Majesty technically outranks him, but... Castellan's expression suggested she'd consumed something unpleasant. Chain of command gets complicated on military vessels. They walked through corridors, managing to be both stunning and oppressive. Soldiers lined walls at intervals, wearing ceremonial armor polished to mirrors. Everyone watched Thorn with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. They don't appreciate outsiders, Castellan said quietly. Especially not humans. No offense intended. None taken. I'm accustomed to being the ugly one at diplomatic functions. They passed through security checkpoints, 1, 2, 3, each more invasive than the last. At the third, a young officer physically frisked him with professional thoroughness. Welcome to Cathedral, Castellan said dryly, where trust is something other people experience. Thorne's quarters turned out to be a converted storage room near enlisted barracks. 12 by 8 feet, one bunk, one locker viewport showing Altheria's curve below. Luxury it decidedly was not. "Training begins at 0600, Castellan said. "I've selected 20 guards for your first session. Fair warning, half think you're here to waste their time, the other half think you're a spy." "What do you think?" She studied him with intelligent dark eyes. "I think Her Majesty doesn't make frivolous decisions. And anyone who survived what you survived is either extraordinarily lucky or extraordinarily skilled. Time reveals which." She paused at the door. "One additional item. Avoid the lower decks. Sections 9 through 12 are restricted. Admiral's orders. What's down there? Above my clearance. Definitely above yours." After she departed, Thorne unpacked with efficiency honed through 30 years living from bags, clothes, basic gear, a photograph creased and faded, 5 people in military dress who'd been dead 25 years. He studied their faces briefly, then secured it in the locker. The ship hummed around him, deep vibration speaking of power barely contained. He'd served on warships before, dozens of them, but Cathedral felt different, alive in ways not entirely mechanical. Old systems responding to presence, to purpose, to something he couldn't quite identify. Thorne pressed his hand against the wall. Metal was warm. Beneath his palm he felt the faintest pulse resembling a heartbeat. "What the hell are you?" he whispered. Cathedral didn't answer. Ships never did. But somewhere deep in the vessel, ancient systems stirred. Lights brightening by fractions, code shifting in quantum processors built before Earth joined Galactic community. In restricted sections of the lower decks, a door that hadn't opened in 25 years began unsealing, pneumatics hissing like indrawn breath. And in the Queen's private chambers, 3 levels above Lyra Vashon, felt the shift and knew with certainty, defying explanation, that bringing Garrison Thorne to this ship had fundamentally altered something. Changed it forever. She stood from her desk hand, moving to her mother's pendant at her throat, wondering what she'd initiated. The training session proceeded exactly as badly as Thorne expected. He stood in the main gymnasium space, large enough to dock shuttles, watching 20 royal guards file in wearing ceremonial armor probably costing more than small warships. They moved with precision, suggesting extensive parade formation drilling and assumptions that meant combat readiness. Thorne wore cargo pants, t-shirt, and boots. No armor, no weapons. Just a man who'd learned combat in places where pretty formations got you killed. Commander Castellan stood aside, arms crossed, expression neutral, but eyes sharp. "Gentlemen," Thorne said, and one guard visibly bristled at the Earth colloquialism. "Ladies, whatever. I'm here to teach you how not to die. My qualifications are straightforward. I've been in 37 combat situations where someone tried very hard to make me dead. I'm still here. They're not. Any questions?" A guard near the front, young confident, raised his hand. "Sir, with respect, we've trained in Altherian combat forms since childhood. What can a human mercenary possibly teach us that we don't already know? How to fall without breaking important bones." The guard blinked. "Excuse me." Thorne crossed the distance in 3 strides, grabbed the extended arm, and executed a throw so fast most didn't see it happen. The guard went airborne, flipped once, hit the mat with a sound like dropped laundry. Frozen silence. Then Thorne offered his hand. "First lesson. When someone can kill you, your fancy armor doesn't matter. Your rank doesn't matter. Your training in forms that look impressive for inspections doesn't matter. What matters is adapting fast enough to survive the next 3 seconds. He pulled the guard to his feet. "What's your name?" "Lieutenant Corvus, sir." The young man's face transitioned from confident to confused to something resembling respect. "Lieutenant Corvus just learned something useful. The rest of you get to learn it the painful way." 2 hours of brutality disguised as education followed. Thorne systematically broke down their formations, exposed weaknesses they didn't know existed, demonstrated with painful clarity the difference between appearing dangerous and being dangerous. He fought them one-on-one, then two-on-one, then five-on-one, every time they ended on the mat wondering what happened. But he also taught how to read opponent weight distribution, how to move in armor not designed for actual combat, how to convert ceremony into lethality. By session end, they were sweating, bruised, looking at him with something beyond contempt. "Tomorrow," Thorne said, "we repeat this. Bring combat gear, not this polished theater. And someone teach Corvus proper boot tying. If you trip during real combat, no one waits for recovery." They filed out, muttering among themselves. Castellan approached, eyebrow raised. "Not subtle. Subtlety gets people killed." Thorne grabbed a towel, wiping sweat. "How long before Varen hears about this? He already knows. Monitors in the walls." She nodded toward a camera pod barely visible near the ceiling. "Admiral likes tracking everything on his ship. His ship, effectively." Castellan's voice dropped. "Her Majesty has the title, but Varen has the crew. 20 years commanding Cathedral. These soldiers loyal to him, first crown second." Thorne looked at the camera pod, knowing Varen was probably watching. He smiled and waved. "Let him observe. I've got nothing to hide." "Don't you?" Before Thorne could respond, alarms shrieked through the ship. Red lights pulsed emergency patterns. The deck shuddered as Cathedral's massive engines powered up. Castellan's earpiece flashed. She listened, face draining color. "Fleet mobilization," she said. "Admiral's orders, we're moving to Mars colonies, full battle deployment." The colonies he wanted to suppress. Looks like he got tired of waiting for negotiations. Thorne felt ice forming in his chest. "Where's the Queen?" "Bridge. But she doesn't—" Castellan stopped as realization hit. "She doesn't have command authority during combat operations. Varen does." They ran. Cathedral's bridge was chaos masquerading as precision. Lyra stood near the command throne, ornate, raised, theatrical, while Admiral Varen orchestrated fleet deployment with casual efficiency, suggesting he'd done this hundreds of times. Holographic displays showed 30 warships moving into formation, weapons, powering up, shields engaging. "Admiral." Lyra's voice cut through organized chaos. "I didn't authorize military action." Varon didn't turn from tactical displays. "Your Majesty, the Council authorized discretionary action. I'm exercising that discretion. The Council isn't here. I am." Now Varen turned, smile devoid of warmth. "Yes, you are. Would your Majesty like to observe from the command throne? It offers an excellent view." Around them, bridge officers pretended not to notice the confrontation. Trained eyes stayed on screens, trained hands worked controls, but everyone listened. "I want you to stand down," Lyra said. "I'm afraid that's tactically inadvisable, ma'am. We're committed to approach vector. Reversing course now would expose our flank to potential hostiles." "There are no hostiles. There are colonists wanting fair representation. There are rebels requiring reminder of what happens when you forget your place." Varen's voice hardened. "Your Majesty, with all respect, this isn't your area of expertise. Military operations require experience. Your mother understood that. Perhaps you should as well." The bridge had gone silent, every officer frozen, waiting to see if their queen would back down the way she always did. Lyra felt it happening. The slow erosion of authority, casual dismissal, practiced techniques Varen used to make her irrelevant in her own hierarchy. 2 years of this. 2 years being the figurehead while others made decisions that actually mattered. She thought of her mother's last words, "Find the Watcher." She thought of Garrison Thorne's eyes in that bar. Your mother was brave. That kind of courage gets you killed. She thought of Commander Castellan's expression discussing complicated chain of command, and she made a choice. "Admiral Varen, you're relieved of command." Absolute silence followed. 30 bridge officers stopped breathing. Varen turned slowly, expression unreadable. "I beg your pardon? You're relieved, effective immediately. Commander Castellan will assume tactical operations until—" "No." One word, flat, final. Lyra felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Excuse me." "I said no, Your Majesty." Varen stepped closer. "I understand you're young. Inexperienced, emotional. These are acceptable failings in a monarch thrust into power prematurely. But I will not watch you destroy what your ancestors built because you lack spine to do what's necessary. How dare you? I dare because someone must. His voice rose pitched to carry across the bridge. This woman is not fit to command. She countermands military operations, coddles rebels, endangers every Altherian life with her weakness. The council gave me discretionary authority. I'm exercising it. Her Majesty will retire to quarters until this situation is resolved. Two security officers moved toward Lyra. She looked at them, soldiers who'd sworn oaths to the crown, seeing apology in their eyes as they reached for her arms. Don't touch the Queen. The voice came from the bridge entrance. Garrison Thorne stood there, Commander Castellan beside him, 12 guards from the training session behind them. All had weapons drawn. Varen smiled. Commander Castellan, are you staging mutiny? No, sir, following the Queen's orders, as we swore to do. Stand down, Commander, direct order. Castellan didn't move. Neither did her guards. The bridge had become a standoff, weapons and authority balanced on a knife's edge. Then something happened no one expected. The lights flickered. Every holographic display on the bridge went dark for half a second. When they returned, they were different, brighter, sharper, and focused not on Varen but on someone else entirely, on Garrison Thorne. Thorne felt it before he saw it, warmth spreading across his back beneath his shirt, where the mark had been silent 25 years. The tattoo that defined him and haunted him and had nearly gotten him killed more times than he could count. The Void Watcher's sigil. It was responding to the ship, and the ship was responding to it. All across Cathedral, systems came online that hadn't functioned since the Purge. Tactical subroutines, defense matrices, weapons arrays locked by codes older than most of the crew. Lights brightened in corridors that had been dim for a generation. Doors unsealed that had been welded shut. In the restricted sections of the lower decks in Section 11, in a chamber no living person had entered in 25 years, the final lock disengaged. The divine failsafe chamber opened, and from the ship's ancient speakers a voice spoke that made every Altherian on the bridge go rigid with shock. Old language, old patterns, old code that should have been deleted decades ago. Primary Watcher detected. Authentication pattern recognized. Genetic marker confirmed. Welcome home, Guardian. The voice sounded exactly like Queen Lyra's mother. Exactly like the woman Admiral Varan had supposedly not murdered 2 years ago. Lyra stared at Garrison Thorne. Thorne stared at holographic displays now showing data he'd hoped never to see again. And Admiral Varan, for the first time in 40 years of command, looked genuinely uncertain. What, he said slowly, is that? Thorne removed his shirt. The entire bridge gasped. The tattoo covered his back from shoulders to waist, black lines and silver traces that seemed to move as you watched. Part ink, part quantum imprint, refusing to remain static. The mark of the Void Watchers, the 51 warriors created to guard the ultimate secret who died for refusing to let it wake. The mark that now glowed faint blue in Cathedral's light, responding to systems that recognized what the crew did not. That Garrison Thorne wasn't just a survivor of the Purge. He was its purpose. This, Thorne said quietly, meeting Varen's eyes across the frozen bridge, is what you killed 50 people to hide, and your Majesty. He turned to Lyra, seeing her shocked confusion dawning comprehension. This is why your mother asked me to protect you, because I'm not just a consultant, I'm the lock, and Admiral Varan has been trying to find the key for 25 years. He's insane, Varan snapped. Security, arrest that man immediately. But no one moved, because Cathedral itself was moving systems, realigning power, flowing to sections that had been dark, and every tactical officer on the bridge stared at their screens with expressions of religious terror. Admiral, someone whispered. The failsafe, it's responding. Varen's face went white. Lyra looked from Thorne to Varen to displays showing something waking in her ship's depths, and understood with crystal clarity that nothing would ever be the same. That bringing Garrison Thorne to Cathedral hadn't just changed things. It had started something someone had spent 25 years trying to prevent. And now it was awake. "Stand by for royal authorization," the ship's ancient voice said, patient and implacable. "Genetic pattern recognition in progress. Please confirm identity last of the bloodline. Please confirm Lyra Vashan, daughter of Neria Vashan, heir to the throne of stars. Do you authorize Primary Watcher Garrison Thorne to access Restricted Protocol Omega?" Every eye on the bridge turned to the young queen who'd been powerless minutes before and now stood at the center of something that made admirals afraid. Lyra Vashan, 28 years old, daughter of secrets, heir to weapons she didn't understand, looked at the man with the glowing mark on his back. "Before I answer," she said quietly, "someone tell me what Protocol Omega actually is." The silence stretched. Then Admiral Varen spoke, and for the first time there was fear in his voice. "It's the end of the world, Your Majesty. All worlds. That's what the Watchers died to prevent. That's what your mother spent her life trying to keep locked." Lyra's hand moved to her mother's pendant. She remembered those final words. Find the Watcher. Not arrest. Not kill. Find. Her mother had wanted this. "Then maybe," Lyra said softly, "it's time we knew why." She looked at the glowing displays, at the ship that was more than a ship, at the man who was more than a mercenary, and at the admiral who'd built his power on silence. "I authorize it. All of it. Whatever my mother wanted Garrison Thorne to find, show him. Show us. No more secrets." "Authorization confirmed," Cathedral said. "Welcome, Royal Guardian. Restricted access granted. Protocol Omega is now available for review." The displays shifted. Data flooded through, and in the ship's depths, in a chamber built to contain the end of everything, lights began glowing that had been dark since before Lyra was born. Admiral Varan moved then fast for his age hand, going to the emergency override panel. But Castellan was faster, her weapon aimed not at her commanding officer's head, but at his hand. "Don't," she said quietly. "Whatever's happening, we're seeing it through." Varen stopped, looked at Lyra with eyes full of calculation and something that might have been regret. "Your mother died to keep this buried. You just undid everything she sacrificed for. I hope you're ready for what comes next, girl, because there's no going back." "Maybe there shouldn't be," Lyra replied. Cathedral hummed around them, ancient and vast, and finally awake after 25 years of forced sleep. In corridors, soldiers felt the change without understanding it. In engineering bays, technicians watched systems activate that shouldn't exist. In lower decks, in restricted sections, doors opened that had been sealed since the Purge. And Garrison Thorne, standing shirtless on the bridge of a warship that knew his name, felt the mark on his back pulse with warmth and purpose, and the weight of 50 dead comrades who'd refused to let the universe end. "All right," he said quietly, pulling his shirt back on. "I think we need to have a very long conversation about what the hell I really am, and what's been sleeping in this ship for the last quarter century." Lyra nodded. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Commander Castellan, place Admiral Varan under guard. Not arrest, guard. I want him where I can ask questions." "Your Majesty," Varan started, "I'm done being powerless, Admiral. I'm done being dismissed. My mother left me a message, a guardian, and apparently a weapon that terrifies you. So we're going to figure out why. All of us. Together." She turned to the bridge crew. "Anyone who has a problem with that can transfer off this ship when we return to port. Until then, you follow my orders. Is that understood?" Slowly, one by one, heads nodded. Not Varen's trained obedience. Something else. Something that might have been respect. Lyra looked at Garrison Thorne, this scarred warrior who carried marks she didn't understand and secrets her mother had died for. "Welcome to Cathedral, Guardian. Now tell me what my mother really wanted you to protect me from." Thorne met her eyes, seeing steel informing behind uncertainty, the queen emerging from the girl. "Not from your Majesty, for your mother wasn't trying to protect you from the truth." He gestured to glowing displays, to data flowing through systems that had waited a generation to wake. "She was preparing you to learn it. The question is whether you're ready for what that means. I guess we'll find out. Cathedral continued its journey toward Mars colonies, but now with a crew that had just learned their ship was more than it seemed, commanded by a queen who'd just claimed power they'd denied her, guided by a man who carried the marks of the dead and hiding in its depths something that an admiral feared more than enemy fleets. Something called Protocol Omega, something that in 3 hours and 17 minutes would change everything any of them thought they knew about power sacrifice and what it really meant to guard the future. But that was still to come. For now, Lyra Vashon stood on the bridge of her mother's ship, felt Cathedral respond to her presence for the first time with something like recognition, and began the journey from powerless figurehead to the woman who would choose the fate of worlds. The first step was simple. "Someone," she said, "take me to Section 11. I want to see what my mother died to hide." And in the silence that followed as the crew processed orders violating every regulation but couldn't quite bring themselves to refuse, Garrison Thorne smiled. Because he'd seen this before. 25 years ago in Another Queen on Another Day. The moment when someone stopped running from the truth and turned to face it head on. "That kind of courage gets you killed," he'd told Lyra in the bar. He'd been wrong. That kind of courage changed everything. Section 11 existed in the kind of darkness that felt deliberate. Lyra descended through corridors growing narrower with each level, Cathedral's architectural grandeur giving way to raw functionality. Steel replaced stone, utility lighting replaced chandeliers. This was the ship's skeleton stripped of ceremony, and it felt more honest than anything above. Garrison Thorne walked beside her, Commander Castellan behind 4 guards she trusted flanking them all. Admiral Veron remained on the bridge under guard, his protests still echoing in Lyra's memory. "You're making a mistake that will cost millions of lives." Maybe, but she was done making mistakes through inaction. The door to Section 11 bore markings in Old Altherian, the kind taught in history classes but never spoken. Lyra traced the symbols with one finger, feeling grooves worn smooth by time. "Beware the weapon that promises victory," she translated, "for it hungers for more than enemies." "Your mother wrote that," Thorne said quietly. "After the purge, she wanted anyone who came here to understand what they were choosing." The door responded to Lyra's genetic signature, pneumatics hissing like a giant drawing breath. Beyond, a chamber stretched into shadows, and in its center, suspended in a gravity field that bent light around it, hung something that made Lyra's breath catch. The divine failsafe looked like a star dying in slow motion, a sphere perhaps 20 feet across, crystalline surface pulsing with colors that had no names in any human language. Violet bleeding into shades of silver that weren't quite white, shot through with veins of darkness that seemed to absorb reality itself. Beneath it, machinery older than Cathedral hummed with patient power conduits thick as tree trunks, carrying energy that made the air taste like copper and ozone. "My God," Castellan whispered. Thorne approached the sphere slowly, as one might approach a sleeping predator. "It's a reality anchor. Your scientists discovered it 30 years ago, buried in a dead moon at the edge of the system. Older than any known civilization. They studied it, tried to understand it, and then someone figured out what it could do. Which is..." Lyra couldn't take her eyes off the thing. It was beautiful and terrible and wrong in ways that defied explanation. Rewrite causality, not just destroy but unmake. If properly activated and amplified, this device could anchor reality to a specific point in time, then cascade that anchor backward through history. Thorne's voice was flat, reciting facts that still horrified him decades later. "It would reset the universe to that moment. Everything after would cease to have ever existed. That's impossible. So was faster than light travel. So was your species meeting mine. Impossible just means we don't understand the mechanism yet." He turned to face her. Varen and the extremist faction wanted to reset reality to the Altherian Pure Age. 1,000 years ago, before humanity left Earth, before first contact. They believed your people were corrupted by outside influence, that this could make you pure again. Lyra felt ice spread through her chest, and humans, all the colony worlds, everyone born in the last 1,000 years, would have never existed, not dead, worse, erased from the pattern of causality itself. No history, no memory, just gone. But my mother stopped them. Your mother created the Void Watchers, 50 volunteers from both our species bonded at the genetic level to this device. Our DNA became part of the security protocol. Without us, the failsafe couldn't activate. We were the lock. Pain crossed his face. And then Varen betrayed us. He figured out that if he couldn't activate it, no one could. Better a dormant weapon than one his enemies might use. So he killed them all. Except you. I ran. Been running ever since. Thorn looked at the failsafe, at the light playing across his scarred features. Until your mother found me 3 years ago. She said she needed me alive for when you took the throne. Said you'd need proof, evidence, a guardian who understood what was really at stake. And now Varen is trying to reach Mars with this ship. Thorn nodded. The failsafe needs an amplifier, something to boost its range from local to universal. Mars has what he needs. A cosmic convergence point, a place where dimensional walls are thin. Your mother found his plans and shut down the project, but I'd bet anything he rebuilt it in secret. Lyra turned from the failsafe decision crystallizing. Then we stop him. We get to Mars first. We warn the colonists. Your Majesty, Castellan interjected carefully. The fleet is already en route. Admiral Varen's forces outnumber us significantly. Even with Cathedral responsive to you, we can't fight 30 warships. Then we don't fight them. Lyra headed for the door purpose in every step. We go around them. The shuttle launched from Cathedral's auxiliary bay, small enough to avoid most sensors, fast enough to beat the main fleet to Mars by hours. Lyra sat in the co-pilot seat, Thorn at controls, Castellan and 2 guards in the back. One was Private Devon Kerrigan, barely 20, who'd distinguished himself during training by being the only one to successfully counter one of Thorn's throws. Behind them, Cathedral hung in formation with Varen's fleet maintaining the illusion that their queen was still aboard. This is insane, Castellan muttered. If Varen realizes you're gone, he'll complete his mission and deal with me later. He thinks I'm powerless. Let him keep thinking it. Lyra studied the navigation display, Mars growing from a red dot to a visible sphere. What do we know about the situation on the ground? Thorn pulled up files on the secondary screen. Colony population of 200,000, mix of Altherian and human settlers. They've been protesting trade restrictions for 6 months. 3 weeks ago, someone fired on a government building. No deaths, but it gave Varen the excuse he needed. Who fired? Good question. Varen's intelligence says local extremists. Local sources say it was a false flag operation. Lyra absorbed this. We need to talk to the colonial leadership before the fleet arrives. Find out what's really happening. And if Varen was right, if there really are rebels planning violence, then we stop them. But with negotiation, not orbital bombardment. The shuttle broke through Mars's thin atmosphere, rust-colored clouds streaming past the viewport. Below, the main colony sprawled across a crater basin, domed habitats connected by tubes, industrial complexes belching processed air. At the edge, agricultural zones grew food in vast greenhouses. 200,000 lives built over 3 generations now sitting in crosshairs. They landed at a public pad far from the government center. Lyra pulled a hood over her distinctive features. Thorn checked his sidearm and they moved into the crowd like ghosts. Mars smelled different than Altheria. Recycled air with undertones of rust and hydroponic nutrients. The people looked different too. Harder. These were colonists who'd chosen frontier life over comfort, who'd built something from nothing and weren't about to let politicians take it away. The colonial governor's office occupied a squat building near the crater center. Lyra had researched Governor Sarah Hendricks, former engineer, 20 years on Mars. Elected 3 times. A woman who spoke her mind and didn't suffer fools. Hendricks didn't look up when they entered. She was bent over a holographic display showing fleet positions, her short gray hair, disheveled face lined with exhaustion. "You've got 30 seconds before I call security," she said. Then you can explain to them why I should care about another inspection team or trade delegation or whatever nonsense Varen sent this time. He sent a battle fleet. Lyra pulled back her hood. Hendrix's head snapped up. For 5 seconds she stared, processing, then her hand moved toward an emergency button. Don't, Lyra said quietly. Please, I'm not here as your enemy. You're the Queen. You authorized this attack. The Council authorized it. Over my objection, I'm here to stop it. Hendrix studied her with the measured gaze of someone who'd survived by reading people correctly. Whatever she saw made her hand drop from the button. You're either the bravest ruler in Altherian history or the stupidest. Haven't decided which. She gestured to chairs. Talk fast. My sources say the fleet arrives in 6 hours. Lyra laid it out. The Council vote. Varan's manipulation, the false choice between authorization and appearing weak. The truth about the divine failsafe and what Varan really wanted from Mars. Hendrix listened, expression hardening with each revelation. When Lyra finished, the governor poured herself something amber from a bottle that had probably been illegal at some point. So your admiral wants to use us as a stepping stone to end the universe. That's a new one. She drank, grimaced. And you came here why? To warn us, to negotiate, to ask what you actually want, not what Varen's reports say. You. What I want. Hendrix laughed, but there was no humor in it. I want Varen's trade restrictions lifted. I want colonist representation in the Council. I want to stop being treated like a resource to be extracted and start being treated like citizens who built something worth having. She leaned forward. We didn't attack your government center. Someone did it for us, trying to give Varan an excuse. We've been trying to figure out who for 3 weeks. Varan's people. That's my guess. False flag operation to justify military action. Hendrix pulled up security footage. This is from the night of the attack. See that shuttle, unregistered military-grade stealth coating. Landed 2 hours before the explosion, left 10 minutes after. No one on Mars has equipment like that. Lyra felt pieces clicking into place. He engineered this. The entire crisis. So he could bring the fleet here, bring the failsafe near the amplification point. Which is where exactly Thorne tapped coordinates on the hologram. About 300 kilometers north of here. Old volcanic caldera that marks a dimensional weak point. If I were building an amplifier, that's where I'd put it. There's nothing there, Hendrix said. We surveyed that area years ago, just empty craters. Surface scans wouldn't detect it. This technology is designed to be invisible until activated. Thorne looked at Lyra. We need to get there. Verify if it exists, and if it does, we destroy it, Lyra finished. The door exploded inward. Thorne moved before the smoke cleared, pulling Lyra down behind the desk as weapons fire tore through the office. Castellan returned fire from the doorway, her guards providing covering positions. Through the chaos, Lyra glimpsed armored figures, military-grade equipment moving with the precision of trained soldiers. Not colonists, not rebels. Cathedral Marines, Castellan shouted over the gunfire. Varen's personal unit. They'd been betrayed. Somehow, despite the precautions, Varen knew she was here. Thorne grabbed Lyra's arm. Back exit, now! They ran, leaving Hendrix and her security scrambling for weapons. Through corridors, down emergency stairs, out into Martian streets where civilians scattered at the sound of combat. Behind them, methodical pursuit. Varan's Marines weren't trying to kill her, they were trying to capture, which was somehow worse. The shuttle was compromised, surrounded by military vehicles. Thorne redirected them toward the industrial sector, using his mercenary experience to navigate the maze of warehouses and processing plants. Lyra's lungs burned in the thin atmosphere, her royal conditioning no match for real exertion. They ducked into a sealed environment facility, agricultural workers staring at them with confusion. Thorne found a maintenance tunnel, led them down into the colony's utility passages, pipes and conduits and recycling systems, the hidden machinery that kept Mars habitable. Contact Cathedral. Lyra gasped, catching her breath. Tell them, Cathedral's communications are locked down, Castellan said, checking her equipment. Varen's people must have seized control the moment we left. Your Majesty, I think we walked into a trap. Lyra felt the walls closing in. Varen hadn't just engineered a crisis on Mars. He'd used it to isolate her, separate her from her power base position himself to make the move he'd been planning for years. A coup. As if summoning him by thought, the colony's emergency broadcast system crackled to life. Varen's voice, grave and authoritative, filled every speaker in every corridor. Citizens of Mars Colony and personnel of the Altherian fleet, it is my unfortunate duty to report that Queen Lyra Vashon has suffered a mental breakdown brought on by the stresses of command. 3 hours ago, Her Majesty fled Cathedral against medical advice, accompanied by a dangerous mercenary with a history of violence. She is considered unstable and potentially a danger to herself and others. Lyra's blood ran cold. The High Council has granted me emergency authority as regent until Her Majesty can receive proper treatment. All military and civilian personnel are ordered to assist in her safe recovery. Use of force is authorized as a last resort. A pause perfectly calculated. We all pray for our young queen's swift recovery. But until then, duty compels me to do what she cannot, to protect our people from threats both external and internal. The broadcast ended. In the silence that followed, Lyra heard the city above them shifting gears, from potential rebellion to manhunt, from crisis to coup. She looked at Thorne, at Castellan, at Private Kerrigan, whose young face had gone pale but determined. "He planned this," she said quietly. "All of it. The attack, the crisis bringing me to Mars. He knew I'd come, knew I'd try to stop him, and he used it to take everything." "Not everything," Thorne replied. "You're still alive. That means the fight's not over. I'm one person hunted by an entire fleet. Your mother was one person, so were the Watchers. Sometimes one person is all it takes." A klaxon sounded through the tunnels. Heavy footsteps above. The Marines were searching systematically, sealing exits, cutting off escape routes. Castellan checked her weapon. "We can't fight them all." "No," Thorne agreed, "but we can disappear. Mars is a big colony with a lot of sympathetic people who just heard their governor get attacked by military forces. Hendrix is smart. She'll spin this, make Varen's people the villains. And us. We go north, to the caldera. If the amplifier exists, we find it. If we can prove Varen's planning what we say he's planning, it changes everything." Lyra made a decision, the kind her mother would have made, the kind that required trusting strangers and hoping courage could substitute for power. "Commander, take Kerrigan, get back to the government center, find Hendrix, help her organize resistance, not military political. Get the word out that I'm not insane, that Varen staged this. Your Majesty, I can't leave you. You can and you will. Someone has to coordinate the pieces, and Thorne can protect me better than a squad." Lyra met her eyes. "Trust me, Bryn. I need you to do this." Castellan hesitated, torn between duty and orders. Finally, she nodded, professional to the core. "Stay alive, ma'am. We'll need you when this is over." She left with Kerrigan disappearing into the tunnel system. Lyra watched them go, then turned to Thorne. "Just us now." "Just us," he agreed. "Ready to find out what your admiral's really building in the desert?" "No, but let's go anyway." They stole a rover from a maintenance depot 3 hours before dawn by local time. Thorne drove, navigating by starlight and instrument readings, pushing the vehicle's systems harder than recommended. The Martian landscape rolled past in shades of rust and shadow. Ancient craters and wind-carved formations that had witnessed eons before humans arrived to argue over territory. Lyra rode in silence, mind racing. Everything she'd been trained for, every lesson in statecraft and diplomacy, felt useless now. She was a fugitive in her own territory, branded unstable by the man who'd murdered her mother, running toward a weapon that could end existence itself. And she'd never felt more alive. Strange that. To find purpose in catastrophe, to discover strength when everything was stripped away. "You're smiling," Thorne observed. "Am I?" "Yeah, kind of terrifying, honestly." Lyra touched her face, surprised. She was smiling. "I spent 2 years being powerless, controlled, dismissed. Now I'm wanted, hunted, and technically insane according to official records. The smile widened, and I finally get to make actual choices. Your mother had the same look, right before she did something that gave half the council heart attacks. Tell me about her. The real her, not the state funeral version. Thorn was quiet for a moment, guiding the rover around a boulder field. Neria Vashan was the smartest person I ever met. Scary smart. She saw patterns others missed, consequences months ahead. When she discovered what the failsafe really was, she didn't just oppose it. She built a solution, created the Watchers, bonded us to the weapon, made us into a living security protocol that couldn't be overridden. And Varen killed them anyway. He killed the security system. But your mother was always 3 steps ahead. She knew he'd try. So she kept me hidden, kept my existence classified, and built in a backup. He glanced at Lyra. She encoded genetic keys into your DNA before you were born. Markers that would let you interface with the failsafe's control systems. You're not just her daughter, you're her final contingency. The rover's alarms shrieked. Thorn hit the brakes, throwing them against restraints. On the horizon, lights, dozens of them, military patrol craft sweeping the desert in search patterns. They're between us and the caldera, Lyra said. Thorn killed their lights, dropped into a crater, and activated camouflage fields. The rover's surface shimmered, matching surrounding terrain. Outside, patrol craft passed overhead searchlights, stabbing down through thin atmosphere. They waited. Minutes stretched. Lyra's breathing was too loud in the confined space. She forced herself to slow it, to think tactically, like Thorn was teaching her guards. First time being hunted? Thorn asked quietly. Yes. You're doing well. Just remember, they can't capture what they can't find. But they will find us eventually. There's too many of them. Eventually isn't now. We fight one moment at a time. The patrol craft moved on. Thorn restarted the rover, taking a longer route around the search pattern. The caldera rose ahead, a massive depression in the Martian surface ringed by cliff walls. Nothing visible inside from this distance, just shadows within shadows. They approached from the east, using terrain to mask their approach. Thorn parked the rover in a ravine, and they continued on foot, environmental suits sealed against thin atmosphere. The caldera's rim was a knife edge, and beyond it, Lyra stopped breathing. The amplifier wasn't hidden. It dominated the entire caldera floor, a construction of metal and crystal that rose 200 feet, pulsing with power that made the air shimmer. Geometric patterns repeated at every scale, fractals of purpose, all focusing toward a central platform where something waited to be connected, where the divine failsafe could be locked in and activated. Mother of God, Thorn whispered. That's not a prototype. That's operational. Around the amplifier, activity. Work crews, military guards, equipment being positioned, and at the center, supervising everything, a figure in Admiral's dress uniform. Varen. He'd been here all along, not on Cathedral commanding the fleet, here preparing his endgame. Lyra pulled out her communicator, recording everything. Visual evidence, proof of what Varan was building. She needed this. Needed to show the council, the military, everyone who thought she was insane. Movement caught her eye. A shuttle descending into the Caldera Cathedral markings. It landed near Varan ramp extending, and soldiers emerged carrying something suspended in a containment field. The divine failsafe. They'd taken it from Section 11, moved it off Cathedral, and now they were going to connect it. We have to stop them, Lyra said. We're 2 people with small arms against 200 soldiers with heavy weapons. We can't. The explosion cut him off. Not from the caldera. Behind them, back toward the colony, a fireball rising into thin atmosphere too large to be accidental. Lyra's communicator crackled, Castellan's voice broken by static and something that sounded like screaming. Your Majesty! Ambush! Government Center! Hendrix is... They're killing everyone who... The transmission died. Lyra stared at the rising smoke on the horizon, then at the amplifier below, then at Thorn's face as he processed what they'd just heard. He's eliminating witnesses, Thorn said. Anyone who knows the truth about the false flag, about his plans, he's cleaning house. Bryn, Lyra whispered. She was there. Maybe she got out. Maybe she's dead. The words hung between them. Lyra looked down at the amplifier at Varen directing soldiers with casual confidence of someone who'd already won, and felt something shift inside her. Something breaking and reforming stronger. She'd spent 2 years learning to be helpless. Learning to accept limits, to work within systems, to trust that authority would protect the innocent. Authority had just murdered her friend. "We're going down there," she said. "Your Majesty, we're going down there and we're going to sabotage that amplifier, and then we're going to make Varen answer for every life he's ended." Her voice was steel. "He thinks I'm powerless. He thinks I'm a frightened girl playing at being queen. He's about to learn what my mother knew. Which is—" Lyra checked her weapon, chambered around, and met Thorn's eyes with something burning behind her own. That true power isn't about authority or rank or who controls the biggest weapon. It's about being willing to do what's necessary when everyone else looks away. She started down into the caldera, not waiting for permission, not asking for approval. Just moving with purpose that came from somewhere deeper than training. Thorn followed because what else could he do? Above them, Martian stars watched with the same indifference they'd shown for billions of years. Below, an admiral prepared to unmake reality, and between them a young queen descended into fire, leaving behind everything she'd been taught to become. What her mother had prepared her to be. A guardian of the future, even if that meant burning in its defense. They infiltrated the caldera using a maintenance tunnel Thorn found by hacking construction schematics. Old colony infrastructure abandoned when the initial settlement moved to better locations. The tunnel ended in a ventilation shaft that opened into a supply depot at the caldera's edge. 2 guards stood watch. Thorn took them down silently, professional and brutal. Lyra watched him work and understood with sudden clarity why her mother had chosen this man. Not because he was good at killing, because he was good at surviving what should kill him. They moved through shadows cast by the amplifier's glow. The structure hummed with power that made Lyra's teeth ache, harmonics that vibrated in bones and blood. This close, she could feel it responding to something, reaching out with invisible sensors. Reaching out to her. "The genetic markers," Thorn whispered. "It knows you're here. Can Varen detect it? If he's watching the right displays, yes." They had minutes at best. Lyra studied the amplifier's base, looking for weak points. The construction was modular pieces interconnected in precise patterns. Destroying one section might cascade through the system. "Might." "Ma'am," a voice whispered from the shadows. "Over here." Private Kerrigan emerged from behind storage containers, dirty and bleeding but alive. Relief flooded through Lyra. "Kerrigan, I thought—" "Commander Castellan ordered me to double back, said you'd need backup." He moved to their position. "She stayed to help Governor Hendricks. I think the government center got hit hard, ma'am." Before Lyra could respond, Varen's voice cut through the night. "Your Majesty, I'm pleased you could join us. It saves time with explanations." He was walking toward them, not running, not shouting orders, walking with casual certainty of someone who'd known exactly where they were the entire time. Behind him, 50 soldiers raised weapons. Lyra stepped into the open hands, visible weapon holstered. Thorn started to protest, but she waved him back. "Explanations of what, Admiral? Your treason, your murder of Governor Hendricks and my personal guard. Unfortunate necessities." Varen stopped 20 feet away, flanked by security. Hendricks was becoming a martyr for a false cause. Commander Castellan was loyal to the wrong person. I regret the waste, but history isn't written by those who hesitate. History isn't going to be written at all if you activate that thing. On the contrary, history will finally be corrected. Varen gestured to the amplifier, to the failsafe now being positioned on the central platform. 30 years we've studied this technology. 30 years of understanding how deeply we've been corrupted by outside influence. Your species, human, brought disease of thought. Weakness disguised as compassion. Your mother embraced it. Let it poison her judgment. She chose negotiation over strength, peace over purity. She chose wisdom over genocide. She chose extinction over evolution. Varen's voice hardened. Every year we grow more like them, more weak, more compromised. In another century, Altheria will be unrecognizable, a pale shadow of what we were. He smiled. But I can fix that. Reset the timeline to before contact, before corruption, restore our people to what they should be. By erasing billions of lives, by erasing a mistake. He turned to his soldiers. Secure them, gently. Her Majesty is still valuable even if her judgment is compromised. The soldiers advanced. Thorn's hand moved to his weapon, but Lyra stopped him with a look. Fighting now would be suicide, and dead queens don't stop apocalypses. They were disarmed, restrained, but not harmed. Varen treated them with professional courtesy, like prisoners of war rather than criminals. That somehow made it worse. "You still need me," Lyra said as they were led toward the amplifier. "The genetic keys, the authorization protocols. You can't activate this without me." "True, but I don't need your willing participation." Varon produced a device, medical grade, designed to extract genetic samples. "Your DNA will suffice. Once I have it properly encoded, the failsafe will accept my commands as if they came from you." "That's not how it works. My mother designed the system to require conscious choice. Your mother designed it to require royal DNA, which you have, and Watcher essence, which—" Varen looked at Thorn with something like satisfaction. "Which I now also have," he gestured. Soldiers dragged out a figure bound and bleeding. Commander Bryn Castellan, alive but barely. "Bryn!" Lyra gasped. Castellan lifted her head, one eye swollen shut, blood on her lips. "Sorry, ma'am. Got careless." "Commander Castellan has been most helpful," Varen said. "Under questioning, she revealed your entire plan. The visit to Hendrix, the route to the caldera, even your belief that Thorn's genetic markers were unique." He smiled. "But I've had 25 years to study Watcher DNA. I know how to synthesize it. I don't need the original anymore." He raised a weapon and shot Garrison Thorn. The plasma bolt took him in the chest, burning through armor and tissue. Thorn dropped without a sound, smoke rising from the wound. "No!" Lyra lunged, but soldiers held her back. She fought like an animal, all training forgotten in pure rage, but there were too many of them. Varen watched her struggle with clinical interest. "Emotional attachment. Another weakness your mother passed to you." He knelt beside Thorn's body, retrieving a sample of blood in a vial. "But useful. Strong emotions make genetic extraction more efficient." Lyra's world had narrowed to Thorn's still form, to the blood pooling beneath him, to 55 years of survival and strength bleeding out onto Martian soil because she'd been stupid enough to think they could win. Varon stood holding the vial up to the amplifier's light. "With this, I have everything I need. Your DNA synthesized Watcher essence and authorization codes that will take hours to crack, but I have ours." He looked at Lyra. "You could have been part of this, could have helped your people ascend to purity. Instead, you'll watch them be saved despite your weakness." He turned to his soldiers. "Secure the prisoners in containment. Begin final amplification sequence. We activate in 6 hours when the cosmic alignment peaks." Lyra was dragged away, Castellan beside her, Kerrigan somewhere behind. She could hear him shouting but couldn't see through her tears. They dumped her in a prefab cell at the caldera's edge. Castellan thrown in after her door ceiling with magnetic locks. Through the cell's viewport, Lyra watched Varon's people work with efficient professionalism. Connecting the failsafe to the amplifier, running final checks, preparing to end the universe and restart it in their own image. She'd failed, completely. Her mother had prepared her for this, had left her guardians and tools and weapons, and she'd failed anyway. Castellan coughed blood. "Sorry," she whispered. "Told them everything. They had drugs, couldn't resist. It's not your fault. Should have died instead of talking." "No." Lyra pulled her friend close, feeling shallow breathing tremors. "You did your duty. You survived. That takes more courage than dying. Thorn's dead. Yes. We're going to die. Probably. Your Majesty." I'm scared. Travashan, 28 years old, daughter of secrets, heir to nothing, held her dying friend in a cell on Mars and looked through the viewport at an admiral preparing to unmake reality. So am I, she whispered. Outside, the amplifier's hum grew louder, building towards something that would shake the foundations of existence. Inside, two women waited for the end, and on the floor between them, soaked in his own blood, hidden beneath his armored vest where no one had thought to check thoroughly, Garrison Thorne's emergency beacon activated, sending a signal to every sympathetic source within range. Sending coordinates, but the beacon was smarter than a simple distress call. It was connected to Thorne's biometrics, to the watcher mark on his back, to systems that had been monitoring the failsafe's status for decades. And when it detected both Thorne's death and the failsafe's activation sequence beginning, it sent a very specific message to a very specific location. Not to Titan 50 light-years away, but to a facility in orbit around Mars itself. A research station that had been officially decommissioned 15 years ago but had actually been repurposed as a secret watcher safehouse, where 5 people had been kept in stasis waiting for this exact scenario. Waiting for the moment when the last active watcher fell and Protocol Omega was compromised. In the Martian night, in a station hidden behind stealth fields and bureaucratic neglect, 5 cryogenic chambers received the transmission and began to wake their contents. Because Garrison Thorne hadn't been the only Void Watcher who survived the purge. He'd just been the only decoy. Death had a particular quality on Mars. Lyra felt it in the cell's recycled air, in the way Castellan's breathing grew shallower with each hour, in the silence that fell over the caldera as Varen's people completed their preparations. The amplifier hummed constantly now, a sound that bypassed ears and resonated directly in bone marrow, counting down to an ending that transcended simple extinction. 4 hours until activation. 4 hours until everything after the Altherian Pure Age ceased to have ever existed. Castellan had stopped bleeding, which was somehow worse. Her body had given up trying to fix itself. She lay with her head in Lyra's lap, one functioning eye staring at the viewport where the failsafe pulsed with colors that had no names. "Tell me about her," Castellan whispered. "Your mother. Real stories, not official history." Lyra stroked her friend's hair, a gesture that felt absurdly inadequate. She used to sneak out of the palace, put on civilian clothes, and walk through Lowtown talking to people about their actual problems. The Royal Guard had standing orders to follow at a distance and never acknowledge her presence. Did it help, the talking? Sometimes. She changed laws, redirected resources, small things that meant everything to the people they affected. Lyra's voice cracked. She believed in listening, in understanding before acting. Varen calls it weakness, I call it wisdom. She'd be proud of you. I failed. I'm sitting in a cell while he ends the universe. You tried. That's more than most would do. Castellan's eye closed. When I was young, maybe 10, I saw the Queen speak at a colony dedication. Your mother. She said something I never forgot. That power without compassion is just another word for cruelty, and compassion without courage is just guilt. Her breathing hitched. You have both, ma'am. That's why you're worth following. Bryn, promise me something. Anything. If you get out of this, if somehow you survive and I don't, tell my sister. Tell her I died doing something that mattered. Lyra's tears fell freely now. You're not going to die? Yes, I am. We both know it. Castellan smiled with cracked lips. But you're not. You're going to figure something out, because that's what leaders do. They find ways when there aren't any. The door to the cell exploded inward, not unlocked, not opened. Exploded magnetic seals overloaded by something that hit them like a shaped charge. Smoke billowed through and figures moved within it, armored and purposeful. Lyra grabbed Castellan, pulled her against the wall, expecting Varen's soldiers coming to extract them for the final procedure. But the figures that emerged wore armor she didn't recognize, black and silver, articulated in ways that suggested technology decades ahead of standard military equipment. and on each chest plate glowing faintly in the smoke a mark she'd seen only once before. The Void Watcher's sigil. 5 figures, 4 humans, 1 Altherian, all of them moving with casual lethality of people who'd forgotten how to not be dangerous. The lead figure pulled off her helmet, revealing a woman in her early 50s with gray-streaked black hair and eyes that had seen galaxies burn. "Your Majesty," she said with crisp military precision. "Commander Sarah Chen, formerly of the Void Watchers. Apologies for the delayed response. We were in stasis orbit above Mars. Garrison's beacon just woke us up." Lyra stared. "You're supposed to be dead." "Everyone is until they wake up." Chen knelt beside Castellan, examining her wounds with professional efficiency. "Garrison kept us frozen in case the purge scenario ever repeated. Smart man, paranoid but smart." She looked up. "Where is he?" "Dead," Lyra said, voice breaking on the word. "Varen shot him 4 hours ago." Chen's expression didn't change, but something hardened in her eyes. "Then we'll make it count." She stood, gestured to her team. "Rodriguez, stabilize the commander. Takeda, secure perimeter. Morrison, you're with me. We're getting Her Majesty to the amplifier." "There are 200 soldiers out there," Lyra said. "There are 5 of us. We've faced worse odds." Chen handed Lyra a sidearm. "Your Majesty, Garrison's beacon gave us his final tactical assessment. Varen has your DNA sample and synthesized Watcher essence. He can activate the failsafe. Our job is to stop him long enough for you to override the authorization." "I don't know how to do that." "Yes, you do. Your mother encoded the protocols in your genetic memory. When you get close enough to the failsafe, they'll activate. You'll know." Chen moved to the door, weapon ready. "But we need to move now, before Varen completes the alignment sequence." Rodriguez, a stocky human with medic insignia, was working on Castellan with equipment that looked decades advanced. "She's stable for now, ma'am. Critical condition, but the nanite infusion should keep her alive until we can get her to proper medical facilities." Castellan grabbed Lyra's hand. "Go. Save us all. I'll be fine." Lyra wanted to argue, to say they could find another way to refuse to leave her dying friend in a cell on Mars. But Castellan's eye held understanding and release and permission to do what had to be done. "Stay alive," Lyra ordered. "That's not a request." "Yes, ma'am." They moved. The caldera had transformed into a war zone. Chen's team hit Varon's perimeter like a hurricane with tactical precision. The other Watchers, Morris and Altherian, moving with inhuman grace, Takeda compact and lethal, Rodriguez once he'd stabilized Castellan, all moved with economy of motion that came from decades of training and genetic modification that made them faster, stronger, more durable than baseline humans or Altherians. Lyra ran behind them, weapon in hand. Training she'd never used suddenly relevant. Private Kerrigan appeared from somewhere, having escaped during the chaos, bleeding but mobile. He fell in beside her without a word. "I thought they had you," Lyra gasped. "They did. Got loose during the attack. Been hiding, waiting for an opening." He grinned through blood. "Turns out I'm harder to kill than I look, ma'am." Ahead, the amplifier dominated the caldera like a geometric god. Varen's soldiers responded to the attack with professional discipline, but they'd trained for conventional warfare. The Watchers were something else. Chen moved through gunfire like it couldn't quite decide whether to hit her return fire perfectly. Placed every shot dropping an enemy. Takeda cleared a path with thermal charges that turned cover into liability. Morrison, the Altherian Watcher, moved with grace that made Lyra understand why her people had once thought the Watchers were blessed. They weren't blessed. They were engineered, but the result was the same. "Your Majesty!" Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "The platform now!" Lyra ran legs, burning lungs, screaming in thin atmosphere. The failsafe pulsed ahead, already locked into the amplifier's central platform colors, shifting through spectrums that made her eyes hurt. Around it, technicians worked frantically, following Varen's screamed orders. Varen himself stood at a control console, hands moving across holographic interfaces. He saw Lyra, and his expression shifted from shock to calculation in a heartbeat. "Impressive timing, Your Majesty. but ultimately pointless. He entered a final command. Sequence initiated. In 3 minutes, the alignment completes and reality resets. Your arrival changes nothing. Maybe not. Lyra climbed onto the platform, feeling the failsafe's pull intensify as she approached. It wanted her, recognized something in her blood, her cells, her existence. But I'm not here to stop you through force. She placed both hands on the failsafe's surface. The universe exploded into light. Genetic memory was nothing like Lyra expected. She stood in a space between spaces where the failsafe's consciousness met her own. Not physical, not metaphorical, something else. A place where information existed as landscape and understanding came through sensation. Her mother stood before her, not as she'd died broken and weak, as she'd lived strong and certain and beautiful. The hologram from the cathedral voice given form in a place where form was negotiable. "Hello, my daughter," Naryavashan said. "If you're seeing this, then everything went wrong and somehow went right." "Mother, I'm not really her, just a recorded consciousness encoded in the failsafe's quantum matrix, a message in a bottle that only you could open." The echo of her mother smiled. "But I speak with her voice, carry her memories, and feel her love for you. So perhaps that's close enough." Around them, the space shifted, showing images. The failsafe's creation, its discovery in that dead moon, the terrible moment when scientists realized what it could do, the faction that saw opportunity in apocalypse, the Watchers created to prevent catastrophe. "I made so many mistakes," Neria said. "I trusted Varen too long, believed his loyalty to our people was genuine, not twisted by fear into something monstrous. When I discovered his plan, I had to act, but I couldn't destroy the failsafe. Too many people already knew it existed. Destroying it would just inspire others to build again. So I locked it instead, made it require choices, not just codes." "Varan has my DNA," Lyra said. "He has synthesized Watcher essence. What can I do that he can't?" "You can make a choice he never will." Her mother reached out, hand passing through Lyra's face like smoke. "The failsafe requires 3 things to activate. Royal DNA, yes. Watcher essence, yes. But also something Varen doesn't have and can't synthesize. Genuine authorization from a mind that understands the full consequence of what it's choosing. Not forced extraction. Not synthesized samples. Real choice. But he's already initiated the sequence. With your genetic material in a syringe, yes. Enough to start the process, but not enough to complete it. The failsafe knows the difference between tissue and consciousness, between sample and sovereign. It's waiting, Lyra. Waiting to see if a true inheritor will accept or refuse. If I refuse, the sequence aborts. If you refuse and survive, yes." Her mother's expression grew grave. But Varen anticipated this. He's rigged the amplifier to force complete activation if the failsafe rejects his authorization. It will tear itself apart, release uncontrolled energy, and cascade into reality breakdown anyway. Slower, messier, but just as fatal. Refusing stops his clean reset. It doesn't stop the ending. Lyra felt ice form in her chest. "Then what do I do?" "You override. Take control of the sequence, reverse the amplification, and shut it down from inside." "But Lyra," her mother's voice broke, "the process will kill you. The feedback will burn through your nervous system, stop your heart, cook your brain. You'll have maybe 30 seconds to complete the override before you die. And even then, success is not guaranteed. So my choice is let Varen end the universe his way or end my life trying to stop him. Yes, I'm sorry. I built this system to require sacrifice because only those willing to pay the ultimate price should wield ultimate power. I never wanted it to be you making that payment." Tears ran down her mother's illusory face. "You were supposed to be safe, supposed to rule in peace. I failed to protect you from this." Lyra looked at the woman who'd given her everything, life, crown, purpose, and understood with sudden clarity that love sometimes meant preparing your children for horrors you couldn't prevent. "You didn't fail," she said quietly. "You gave me the tools, the knowledge, the strength. Everything I need is here because you put it there. She smiled. And you gave me Garrison, who taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act despite it. He was the best of us. He died for me. Then honor that sacrifice, make his death mean something. The space around them began to dissolve, reality reasserting itself. Through the fading landscape, Lyra heard shouting gunfire, Chen's voice screaming orders. I love you, Neria whispered. I always will. Be brave, my daughter. Be wise. And remember. The vision shattered. Lyra opened her eyes to chaos. She knelt on the platform, hands still pressed to the failsafe, but now fully conscious of what she was touching. The device's consciousness wrapped around hers like a living thing, showing her pathways. Protocols, the architecture of reality's reboot, and there buried in the code, the override. Complex, intricate, requiring precision that would be impossible while your nervous system was burning itself to ash. Unless you were very fast and very lucky and very willing to die. Varen stood across the platform, weapon drawn but not firing. Around them the battle had paused. Chen and her watchers held position, covering Lyra but not advancing. Varen's soldiers had them outnumbered but seemed hesitant, aware that something was happening beyond simple combat. You can't stop this, Varen said. Even if you override my authorization, I've set the amplifier to force complete. We both know what that means. Yes, Lyra replied. It means you were so afraid of being wrong that you chose to end everything rather than admit your vision was poisoned. My vision was pure. Your mother corrupted it with sentiment and weakness. My mother was the strongest person I've ever known, and she taught me that real strength is measured not by what you can destroy, but by what you're willing to sacrifice to protect. Lyra stood still, connected to the failsafe, feeling its hunger to activate, warring with its design to require conscious choice. You want to reset the universe because you're afraid of change, of growth, of becoming something more than what your ancestors were. I want to save our people from extinction. You want to murder everyone who doesn't fit your definition of pure. That's not salvation. That's genocide dressed in philosophy. Varen's hand tightened on his weapon. You're a child playing at wisdom you don't possess. Stand aside. Let me complete what should have been finished decades ago. No. One word, flat. Final. Varen fired. The plasma bolt never reached her. The failsafe itself reacted, generating a field that bent space, redirecting the energy harmlessly into the Martian sky. Around them, the amplifier hummed louder, alignment approaching completion. 2 minutes. Your Majesty, Chen called from the perimeter. Whatever you're going to do it now. Lyra looked at the woman who'd emerged from cryogenic sleep to help a queen she'd never met. Looked at Private Kerrigan, barely old enough to vote but willing to die for something larger than himself. Looked at the Watchers holding position, each of them carrying the same mark Garrison Thorne had worn. Each of them chosen for the capacity to sacrifice everything in service of a future they'd never lived to see. Her mother had chosen well. Commander Chen, Lyra said, voice carrying across the caldera with absolute authority. When the amplifier shuts down, there will be feedback, potentially catastrophic. Get everyone as far from this platform as possible. You have 90 seconds. Chen didn't argue. She'd spent enough time around Vashans to know when they'd made a choice that couldn't be negotiated. Fall back, everyone, perimeter beta now. The Watchers moved, dragging reluctant soldiers with them. Varen's people retreated not from orders but from sudden understanding that something beyond normal combat was happening. Only Varen remained standing on the platform opposite Lyra, weapons still raised. You're going to kill yourself, he said. Override the sequence, shut down the amplifier, and die in the process. That's your plan. Yes, that's suicide. That's responsibility. Your mother would never— My mother did exactly this. Lyra's voice cracked with fury. She created a system that required sacrifice because she knew power without cost corrupts absolutely. She prepared me for this moment my entire life, embedding protocols in my DNA, building safeguards in case someone like you twisted good intentions into catastrophe. And you killed her for it. You murdered a woman who loved her people more than her own life because she wouldn't let you play God with existence itself. I didn't. Veron stopped. Something in his expression shifted, cracked. 25 years of certainty fracturing under the weight of a truth he'd refused to acknowledge. She was going to expose everything, ruin years of preparation, destroy our best chance at committing the greatest act of mass murder in history, yes. She was. Lyra felt the failsafe's countdown entering its final phase, 60 seconds until irreversible activation. And rather than face the possibility that you were wrong, that your vision of purity was just fear wrapped in ideology, you killed her. Made it look like heart failure. Let me inherit a crown I wasn't ready for and a secret that would have destroyed me if Garrison hadn't been there to explain it. Tears ran down Veron's face. An old man confronting the sum of his choices and finding it weighed too much. I was trying to save us, he whispered. You were trying to play God. There's a difference. 30 seconds. Lyra pressed deeper into the failsafe's consciousness, feeling the override pathway open before her. Intricate, deadly, requiring precision that would be impossible once the feedback started burning through her nervous system. But possible. Barely. If she moved fast enough and died slow enough to finish the sequence. Her mother had built this well. Veron, Lyra said, and her voice carried compassion she hadn't known she possessed. It's not too late. You can still choose something different. Help me shut this down. Make your last act one of preservation, not destruction. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in the Admiral's eyes. Possibility, a different path. The man he might have been if fear hadn't twisted him into a monster. Then it died. I'm sorry, he said and raised his weapon. The shot caught Lyra in the shoulder, spinning her partially off the platform. Pain exploded through her arm, but she held on, maintaining contact with the failsafe, refusing to break the connection. If I can't activate it, neither can you, Veron said and fired again. This shot went wide because Veron's chest exploded. He dropped weapon, clattering away, blood spreading across the platform. Behind him, 100 yards away, Commander Chen lowered a sniper rifle that shouldn't have been able to make that shot. Nobody shoots my queen, Chen said clearly. 15 seconds. Lyra pulled herself fully onto the platform shoulder, screaming, blood soaking her shirt. She placed both hands on the failsafe and dove into the override sequence. The universe opened before her, not metaphorically, literally. She saw the structure of reality, the quantum foam that underlay existence, the threads connecting every moment to every other moment. The failsafe wanted to sever those threads, reset them to a configuration that pleased its would-be master. And the amplifier had already begun the process, charging fields that would cascade through the dimensional weak point and unmake everything after the Altherian Pure Age. Lyra grabbed the threads. It was like touching lightning, like holding stars, like containing the universe in cupped hands while it burned through her palms. Every nerve in her body screamed. Her vision went white, then red, then colors that didn't exist. She tasted copper and ozone, smelled burning meat that was her own flesh cooking from the inside. But she held on. The override required 73 specific inputs, each one timed to microsecond precision, each one requiring conscious choice to implement. Her mother had designed it to be impossible for anyone working from external authorization or forced access. It required presence, agency, will. It required someone choosing to die for everyone else. Lyra began the sequence. Input 1. Recognition of full consequence. She saw the timeline stretch before her, every life that would end. If she failed, every person who would never exist if Veron's plan succeeded. She acknowledged them all, held them in her mind, and chose to protect them. Accepted. Input 15. Confirmation of sacrifice. The system wanted to know she understood she would die, that this wasn't ignorance or desperation, that she was making an informed choice to end her existence to preserve theirs. Accepted. Input 37. Rejection of power. The failsafe offered her everything. Control over reality itself, the ability to reshape existence however she wished. She could rewrite history, eliminate her enemies, make herself immortal. All she had to do was choose activation instead of shutdown. Rejected. Her mother's voice echoed through the burning, "True power is measured by what you're willing to sacrifice." Input 52. Authorization of termination. The system required her explicit permission to end, not just the reboot sequence but the failsafe itself, to permanently destroy the device so it could never be used again. This was irrevocable, final, and it required her to say yes while knowing the feedback would kill her. Accepted. Input 73. Final confirmation. One last chance to choose survival over martyrdom. The sequence could still be aborted. She could disconnect live, let someone else make this choice someday. Walk away with burns and scars but a future ahead of her. Or she could finish it, end the threat, save everyone, and die doing it. Lyra Vashan, 28 years old, daughter of Neria Vashan, Queen of Altheria, heir to nothing and guardian of everything, made her choice. Accepted. The failsafe screamed. Every system overloaded simultaneously. The amplifier's carefully constructed fields collapsed inward energy, cascading through pathways that couldn't contain it. The crystalline structure of the device itself began to fracture, quantum bonds severing under stress no material could withstand. And through it all, Lyra held on, maintaining contact as the override completed, feeling her nervous system burn, her heart struggling, her mind fragmenting under feedback that was erasing her moment by moment. She thought of her mother, of Garrison Thorne, who'd died protecting her, of Commander Castellan fighting for life in a cell, of Private Kerrigan who'd followed her into fire, of Chen and the Watchers who'd emerged from frozen sleep to stop an apocalypse. She thought of 200,000 colonists on Mars who'd never know how close they came to never existing, of billions across the galaxy who'd sleep safely tonight because one person chose to burn so they wouldn't have to. And she felt something she'd never felt before. Peace. The override sequence completed. The failsafe exploded. But in that final microsecond, something else happened. The emergency medical nanites that Garrison Thorne had programmed to activate upon his death, they hadn't all deployed into his own system. He'd split the dose, half for him in case he survived, half coded to seek the nearest genetic match to Queen Neria Vashan, within a 100-meter radius. Half for Lyra. They'd been circulating in her bloodstream for hours, dormant, waiting for catastrophic trauma to trigger their full activation. The failsafe's feedback was certainly catastrophic trauma. As Lyra's nervous system began to burn, as her heart stuttered, as her brain started to cook, the nanites surged into action. Military-grade trauma response designed to keep soldiers alive through injuries that should kill them instantly. They couldn't stop all the damage, but they could slow it, by seconds, redirect the feedback away from critical systems just long enough for the override to complete. Just long enough for Lyra to survive what should have killed her. Lyra opened her eyes to white light and the smell of antiseptic. Medical facility, clean sheets, monitoring equipment beeping steadily. Her entire body felt like it had been dipped in molten metal, but the pain was manageable, which meant serious drugs. She turned her head, movement sending spikes of agony down her spine, and saw Commander Bryn Castellan in the next bed, alive, bandaged extensively but breathing without machinery. "You're awake," someone said. Chen sat in a chair between their beds, looking exhausted but satisfied. "You've been out for 3 days. We weren't sure you'd wake up." "The failsafe." "Destroyed. The amplifier, too. Complete molecular breakdown. Nothing left but slag and radiation that'll take decades to dissipate." Chen smiled. "You did it, Your Majesty. You actually pulled off the impossible. I should be dead." "You should be. Would have been if not for Garrison." Chen pulled something from her jacket. A small device, medical grade, with Thorne's personal insignia. "Emergency medical nanites. Military-grade trauma response system. He programmed it to activate if he died within 100 meters of you. Split the dose, half for himself, half for you. The moment his heart stopped, half deployed into his system. Too late for him, but yours deployed the moment you touched the failsafe and started the override. Deployed where? Into you. It's been repairing your nervous system, stabilizing your cardiovascular function, keeping you alive long enough for your body to heal itself. Garrison Thorne died saving your life twice. Once by drawing fire, once by making sure his death activated the one thing that could keep you breathing through the override feedback. Lyra felt tears burn her eyes. Did he know that he was going to die? Garrison always knew he was going to die, he just made sure it was for the right reasons. Chen stood. Your Majesty, a lot has happened while you were sleeping. The fleet, the council, Earth, they need to brief you, but it can wait until you're stronger. Tell me now. Chen exchanged a glance with someone Lyra couldn't see. Then Governor Sarah Hendricks stepped into view, alive and upright despite extensive burns covering one side of her face. Your Majesty, Cathedral arrived 16 hours after the amplifier was destroyed. Your people saw the wreckage, pulled the survivors, and got the full story from everyone Varen didn't manage to kill. Hendrix's intact side smiled. The High Council is calling for your return, not as a figurehead, as an actual ruler. Varen's confession before he died, he talked for 3 minutes while bleeding out, explaining everything, got transmitted fleet-wide. Everyone knows the truth now. The Council authorized him. The Council was lied to, manipulated. When they learned what he was really planning, 8 of them resigned. The remaining seats are being held for your appointments. Hendricks pulled up a data display. You also received formal requests for alliance from 23 Earth colonies, 16 independent stations, and the Terran Federation itself. Everyone wants to negotiate directly with the Queen, who chose death over genocide. Lyra processed this. 3 days ago, she'd been a powerless figurehead. Now she was, what a hero. A martyr who survived martyrdom. What about the Watchers when Chen's team is staying? The commander spoke up. Someone needs to train the next generation. Make sure if another failsafe is ever found, there are people who understand how to lock it properly. She paused. We're also going to recover Garrison's body, give him the funeral he deserved, the one he never got because he was too busy surviving to stop running. I want to speak at it. You'll do more than speak. You're going to explain to the entire galaxy what the Void Watchers were really for, make their sacrifice part of the historical record instead of classified mythology. Chen's expression hardened. And you're going to make sure nothing like Varen ever happens again. A new voice, weak but determined. She's going to reform the entire government system, aren't you, ma'am? Castellan had woken up, one eye still swollen shut, but the other focused with familiar intensity. Advanced medical nanites were visible beneath the transparent bandages on her arms. The same technology that had saved Lyra now being used to repair Castellan's extensive damage. Bryn. Someone has to. Can't let you do all the heavy lifting yourself. Castellan tried to sit up, succeeded with visible effort. Your Majesty, you died saving everyone. You get to decide what that sacrifice buys us. Use it. Lyra looked at these women warriors, survivors, leaders in their own right, and felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty, not confidence, something better. Purpose. How long until I can travel? Chen checked monitors. Med staff says 2 weeks minimum. I say 5 days if you push it. We push it. I want to return to Altheria within the week. Schedule addresses to the council, the military, and public broadcast. Lyra's voice strengthened as she spoke, finding rhythm and command that felt earned rather than inherited. We're going to rebuild everything, starting with the promise that no one person ever controls a weapon that can end existence, and ending with a government that serves people instead of ruling them. That's a revolution, Hendricks observed. Good. We could use one. And what about him? Chen gestured to the doorway where Private Kerrigan stood at attention, uniform clean despite visible bandages beneath it. Private Kerrigan, Lyra said. You distinguished yourself in combat, showed initiative under fire, and stayed with me when you had every reason to run. How would you like a promotion and a transfer to the new Guardian training program?" Kerrigan's young face lit up. "I'd be honored, Your Majesty." "Good. Report to Commander Chen for processing. You're going to help us build something that makes sure what happened here never happens again." As Kerrigan saluted and left, Lyra felt the pieces falling into place. Not perfectly, nothing ever was, but falling into a pattern that might actually work. A pattern built on sacrifice wisdom, and the hard-earned understanding that power without responsibility was just another word for tyranny. The funeral for Garrison Thorne took place on neutral ground, a rocky moon between Earth and Altheria, chosen specifically because it belonged to no one and everyone. Chen and the Watchers built the memorial themselves, a simple stone marker in a place where gravity was gentle and stars blazed without atmospheric interference. Lyra stood before 5,000 people, broadcasted to billions more, and spoke. Her shoulder still hurt. Scars from the fail-safe's feedback marked her arms in silver patterns that would never fully fade. But she stood straight, voice clear, speaking truth to a galaxy that had lived on lies too long. "I didn't know Garrison Thorne well. We met 3 weeks ago. He trained my guards, infiltrated enemy territory with me, and died buying me the seconds I needed to stop an apocalypse." She paused, looking at the stone. "But I knew his legacy. The Void Watchers were created by my mother to be the answer to a question no one wanted to ask. What do you do with power that can destroy everything? How do you protect people from weapons that promise victory but deliver extinction?" The crowd was silent. Humans and Altherians standing together, military and civilian, old divisions feeling suddenly less important. My mother's answer was to create guardians. People bonded to the weapon at a genetic level, making their existence the key to its activation. They didn't guard the failsafe from theft, they guarded reality from the failsafe itself. And when someone decided genocide was preferable to admitting fear, they died to keep that nightmare locked away. Lyra's voice grew stronger. "Garrison Thorne survived because he was lucky and skilled and too stubborn to die when he was supposed to. He spent 25 years running from a past that haunted him. Hunted by people who wanted him dead. Carrying secrets that could have bought him wealth or power if he'd been willing to trade them. He never did, because the Void Watchers weren't mercenaries. They were martyrs who chose to keep living. Guardians who understood that true strength isn't measured by what you can destroy, but by what you're willing to sacrifice to protect." She stepped closer to the marker, placed her hand on the stone. "Garrison Thorne died the way he lived, protecting someone else, giving his life so others could continue theirs. That's not tragedy. That's purpose realized. That's a life that mattered." Lyra turned back to the crowd, to the cameras, to the billions watching. "We honor him today, but tomorrow we continue his work. I'm establishing the Guardian Protocol, a new organization dedicated to identifying and securing technologies too dangerous for any single government to control. There'll be volunteers from every species, every world, chosen not for loyalty to nations, but for commitment to the future. And they'll carry the mark of the Void Watchers as a reminder that some responsibilities transcend politics." Chen stepped forward, the other Watchers with her. Together they stood beside Lyra, living proof that martyrdom wasn't always fatal. "We begin recruiting immediately," Chen announced. "The requirements are simple. Willingness to sacrifice everything, ability to see past fear to necessity, and the kind of courage that chooses death over abandoning your principles." She smiled slightly. "If you think you qualify, prove it. We're not looking for heroes, we're looking for people who understand that heroes usually die because someone has to." The funeral ended. The crowd dispersed. But the message spread. Within a week, 50,000 applications arrived. Within a month, the Guardian Protocol had its first class of recruits. Within a year, they'd identified and secured 3 technologies that made the failsafe look gentle by comparison. And through it all, Lyra Vashon led. 1 year later, Cathedral looked different. They'd removed the incense, stripped away half the ceremonial decorations, and converted the restricted sections into training facilities. The ship still carried weapons, but now it also carried classrooms, negotiation chambers, and diplomatic quarters. A warship becoming something more, something better. Lyra stood on the observation deck watching Earth turn below. Beside her, Chen reviewed recruitment files, making notes in margins with meticulous attention that had kept her alive through the purge. "The latest class is promising," Chen said. 40% Altharian, 40% human, 20% from allied species, mixed background, mixed training, united purpose. Garrison would approve. Garrison would complain they're too soft, then spend 6 months turning them into the hardest squad in the sector. Chen smiled. But yes, he'd approve. They stood in comfortable silence, two women who'd chosen to survive catastrophe and build something from the ashes. Around them, Cathedral hummed with purpose, no longer a weapon waiting for orders. Now a symbol of what happened when people chose wisdom over force. "Your Majesty," Chen said quietly, "can I ask you something personal? Always. Do you regret it, choosing to die? I know the nanites saved you, but you didn't know they would. You made peace with ending. Now you have to live with that choice. Does it haunt you?" Lyra considered the question honestly. "Sometimes. Late at night when the scars ache and I can't sleep, I wonder what it would have been like to just stop. To find peace in sacrifice without having to face the aftermath." She touched her shoulder, feeling the tissue damage that would never fully heal. "But mostly I'm grateful. Because dying for something is easy, living for it is hard, and I'd rather do the hard thing. Your mother would agree. My mother did this first, I'm just following her example." The door opened. Commander Castellan entered, walking with only slight evidence of her injuries. The advanced nanites had done remarkable work. Behind her, a nervous young woman in cadet uniform, maybe 22, with eyes that had seen too much already. "Your Majesty," Castellan said, "this is Cadet Elise Varon. She requested an audience." Lyra turned, studying the girl. The resemblance was unmistakable. Same bone structure, same intensity. Cade Varon's granddaughter. "Thank you for seeing me," Elise said, voice steady despite visible nerves. "I know my family name is complicated. Your grandfather tried to end the universe." "Yes, complicated." Lyra gestured to a chair. "Sit. Tell me why you're here." Elise sat, hands clasped in her lap. "I watched your speech at the funeral about how the Watchers chose to guard reality from weapons that promised victory but delivered extinction. About how true strength is measured by sacrifice, not destruction." She looked up, meeting Lyra's eyes directly. "My grandfather believed he was strong, believed his vision was righteous. He died proving he was neither. I want to spend my life becoming what he wasn't, someone who guards the future instead of destroying it." "You joined the Guardian Protocol." "I applied, made it through initial screening. Now I'm here for final authorization." Elise's voice didn't waver. "I know you have every reason to reject me. My family name carries weight you probably want nowhere near your new organization. But I'm asking anyway, because someone has to break the cycle, and I'd rather it be me on my own terms than forced into it by guilt and history." Lyra studied her, saw echoes of Varen in the bone structure, but something else in the eyes. Something that might have been wisdom if given time to develop, or might have been the same fear that had twisted her grandfather into a monster. Only one way to find out. "Commander Chen, what's your assessment?" Chen looked at Elise with the measured gaze of someone who'd spent 30 years reading people's capacity for violence and choice. Her psych evals are clean, combat scores are adequate, ideological commitment seems genuine, though that can be faked. "If I had to guess," she paused, "she's either exactly what she says she is or an extremely patient infiltrator. Time will tell which." "Commander Castellan, I say we give her the hardest assignment in the organization and see if she breaks or bends. If she breaks, we learn she wasn't ready. If she bends, we learn she's got steel we can forge." Lyra nodded slowly. She thought of her mother who'd seen potential in Garrison Thorne when everyone else saw a traitor and a mercenary, who'd believed that people could choose to become better than their circumstances suggested. "Cadet Varen," Lyra said, "I'm approving your application with conditions. You'll train twice as hard, face twice the scrutiny, and carry the weight of proving every day that your grandfather's sins don't define you. You'll be assigned to Chen's personal unit, which means you'll face situations that would break most veteran soldiers. And if at any point we determine you're a liability, you'll be removed without discussion or appeal." Elise didn't flinch. "Understood, Your Majesty. But," Lyra smiled slightly, "if you survive the training, if you prove yourself worthy of the mark, then you'll become what your grandfather never was. A true guardian. Someone who chooses the future over the past. Welcome to the protocol, cadet. Don't make me regret this." "I won't, ma'am. I swear it." Elise left, escorted by Castellan to begin processing. Chen watched her go, then turned to Lyra with raised eyebrows. "That was either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. My mother once told me that the line between the two is usually determined by outcome, not intention." Lyra returned to the viewport, watching Earth's Terminator line divide the planet between light and darkness. "Besides, what's the point of surviving an apocalypse if we don't use the second chance to take risks on people?" "Fair point." They stood together in comfortable slints, two survivors building a future from the ruins of what had been. Outside stars blazed in the infinite dark, indifferent to human drama, but witness to it nonetheless. Somewhere in that darkness, other threats waited. Other weapons that promised victory but delivered extinction. Other people who'd look at power and see salvation instead of responsibility. But now, for the first time in a generation, there were guardians watching. People who'd chosen to stand between civilization and catastrophe. Who'd learned from the Void Watchers that the greatest courage wasn't destroying your enemies, but protecting everyone from the darkest impulses of those who claimed to be heroes. Lyra Vashon, 29 years old, survivor of death, Queen of Altheria, royal guardian of the protocol, looked at the future and felt something she'd never quite experienced before: hope. Not naive optimism, not blind faith, just the solid conviction that people given the choice would more often choose wisdom over fear, light over darkness, life over death, and if they didn't, well, that's what guardians were for. "Commander Chen," Lyra said, "let's go review the next recruit class. I want to personally interview everyone who makes it past initial screening." "That's 300 people, ma'am. Will take weeks." "Then we'd better start now. The universe won't protect itself." They left the observation deck together, walking through corridors that had once been built for war and now served peace. Behind them, Cathedral continued its orbit, watching over Earth with sensors that had been designed to find enemies but now searched for opportunities to help. One ship, one woman, one choice to become better than the past suggested. It wasn't much, but it was a start, and sometimes a start is all the universe needs. The Academy occupied an entire moon, built from scratch by combined Earth-Altherian resources funded by donations from 20 species operated by veterans of every conflict in recent memory. Not a military installation. Something new. A place where people came to learn how to guard the future instead of fighting over the past. Lyra walked through the main courtyard, gray threading through her hair, now scars from the failsafe visible when she wore short sleeves. She was 33, she felt older. But she'd earned every year. Around her, cadets trained. Hand-to-hand combat, tactical analysis, philosophy and ethics, engineering and xenobiology, everything you needed to identify threats and protect people from their own worst impulses. Commander Chen jogged past, leading a morning run of 50 cadets who looked like they regretted their life choices. Chen was 57 now, but moved like 40 and commanded like someone who'd forgotten how to be anything but dangerous. She caught Lyra's eye and grinned. Some things never changed. Lyra found who she was looking for in the meditation garden. Elise Varon, now 27, sat on a stone bench wearing the uniform of a protocol officer. Full rank, full clearance, full trust earned through 5 years of service that had taken her to every corner of known space. She'd found and secured 4 reality-threatening technologies, negotiated 3 peace treaties, and personally stopped 2 attempted coups. She'd also taken a plasma bolt to the spine that left her partially paralyzed. The braces on her legs were visible beneath standard-issue pants. "Your Majesty," Elise said, standing with effort. "I didn't expect you today. Thought I'd check on our success story." Lyra gestured for her to sit. "How's the recovery?" "Slow, painful, necessary." Elise smiled. "Commander Chen says pain is just weakness leaving the body. I think weakness left 2 years ago, but pain decided to stay for the ambiance." Lyra laughed. It felt good. She didn't do it enough anymore. "I wanted to tell you personally," Lyra said. "The Council approved your request. You're being promoted to commander assigned to head the new Guardian station near the Galactic Rim. Full autonomy, direct reporting to me only." Elise's expression went carefully neutral. "That's a significant responsibility." "You've earned it. 5 years proving every day that names don't define us, that we can choose to become better than our history suggests." Lyra pulled something from her jacket, a small case velvet-lined. "And because you've earned it, you get this." She opened the case. Inside on a chain hung a pendant. Simple design, elegant, engraved with the mark of the Void Watchers. "This was Garrison Thorne's," Lyra said quietly. "He wore it for 30 years, carried it through the purge, through decades of running, through every choice that led him to Mars and the moment he died, buying me time to save everyone." She held it out. "Now I'm giving it to you. Not because you're his replacement. No one could be. But because you've become what he was. A guardian who understands that some responsibilities transcend everything else." Elise took the pendant with trembling hands. "Your Majesty, this is too much. I'm not worthy of—" "None of us are. We just do it anyway." Lyra smiled. "Welcome to the legacy, Commander Varen. Make it count." They sat together in the garden, teacher and student, queen and guardian, 2 women who'd chosen to survive catastrophe and build meaning from the ashes. Around them, cadets trained for a future that would never be perfect but might be better than the past. Private Kerrigan, now Lieutenant Kerrigan, head of tactical training, walked past with a group of new recruits, his young face weathered by 5 years of hard service, but still carrying that determination that had kept him going on Mars. Commander Castellan was somewhere in the medical wing, having just returned from a diplomatic mission that had prevented a war between 2 minor systems. The nanite repairs had healed her body, but she walked with a slight hitch that reminded everyone what it cost to stand between civilization and chaos. Governor Hendricks had been elected to the new Joint Council, representing colonial interests with the same blunt honesty that had kept Mars alive through Varen's coup. And Chen was everywhere and nowhere, training the next generation, hunting threats that lurked in the dark building. The network that would catch the next apocalypse before it began. All of them building something that mattered, something that would outlast them. And somewhere in whatever existence came after Neria Vashin and Garrison Thorne looked down at what they'd built and knew their sacrifices had meant something. That courage in the end was always rewarded, not with safety, not with comfort, but with purpose. And purpose, as it turned out, was all anyone really needed. Lyra stood helping Elise to her feet, and together they walked through the academy they'd built from nothing. Around them, hundreds of cadets, human, Altherian, and dozens of other species trained to be the Guardians. The universe didn't know it needed. The scars on Lyra's arms caught the light silver patterns that told a story of sacrifice and survival. She didn't hide them anymore. They were proof that the impossible could be survived, that one person's choice could shift the trajectory of worlds. That sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing were the same thing. "Your Majesty," Elise said as they walked, "do you ever wonder if we're enough, if all of this is enough?" Lyra looked at the academy, at the cadets, at the future they were building, one choice at a time. "No," she said honestly. "We'll never be enough. There will always be another threat, another weapon, another person who thinks power means they should decide who deserves to exist. But we don't have to be enough. We just have to be here, standing watch, choosing every day to protect rather than destroy. She smiled and it reached her eyes. That's all anyone can do, and sometimes it's everything the universe needs. They walked on together, guardian and teacher, survivor and leader, two women who'd faced the end of everything and chosen to build something better from what remained. Behind them, Cathedral hung in orbit above the academy, no longer a weapon but a promise. That some things were worth protecting, that some responsibilities transcended everything else, and that courage in all its forms would always matter more than power. The universe turned indifferent and infinite, but on one small moon between Earth and Altheria, people learned how to guard against the darkness, and that in the end made all the difference.